us. I'm Brian Garman, head of school, and the Rubenstein Lecture is one of my very favorite events of the year. It's an anchor event for Sidwell Friends, and we have a very special night for you here this evening. So we're so glad that you could join us. If we could, after the manner of friends, let's begin with a moment of silence, please, and hold our troubled world in the light. Thank you. I want to acknowledge before we start that Nekisha's done such amazing work in the district, and part of what she's done is to examine the role of eminent domain in her work, which is extremely powerful. And so it seemed important in this context to acknowledge the history of the land that we're on right now. The District of Columbia, of course, and this portion of the district is built on the traditional ancestral homelands of the Piscataway and Anacostan people. Yeah. Also, I think it's important to acknowledge, as we have previously, the history of this campus and Zartman House in particular. In 1830, Charles Norse and his wife, a Quaker named Rebecca Wister Morris, moved into the Highlands, which is what we now call Zartman House. We suspect the house, which Sidwell Friends School purchased in 1955, was built by enslaved African Americans. According to the 1830 census, the Norses enslaved 7 African Americans on this property. The 1850 census indicated that the family enslaved 4 people. 2 additional free men of color, William Brooks and Anthony Hutchinson, also lived on the estate. By the time the 1860 census was administered, 9 years after Charles's death and a year before the Civil War, Rebecca Norse was no longer counted among those who claimed ownership of human beings. 7 free Black people lived at the Highlands: Richard Quill, a farmhand, and Sarah Brooks, a cook, and what appear to be Sarah's 5 children. Now to the lecture and the history of the lecture, which has really been an extraordinary contribution to the school. In 1981, Lee Rubenstein, together with his children, Beth, class of 77, Barton, class of 81, Amy, class of 84, established an endowed fund to honor the memory of Lee's late wife, Daryl Reich Rubenstein. Daryl was a curator at the Smithsonian Institution, an art historian, and a major supporter of the arts. She was also an active member of the Sidwell Friends School community. She taught speech in the middle school and organized photography competitions and exhibitions of photos and prints. Since the establishment of this program in Daryl's memory, over 30 nationally recognized artists have visited the school to exhibit their work and spend time with students and faculty. That is really one of the key components of this program, is the time that the artists spend with students and faculty. And I want to recognize Aaron Brophy, middle school art teacher and the curator of the Rubenstein Gallery, for the tremendous work he does in bringing the artist's work into contact with the students. He integrates it into the curriculum, and he really does a marvelous job of that every year. So if we could just have a round of applause. Thank you, Aaron. I also, we have the members of the Rubenstein family here in the front row. If we could have, including 2 grandchildren. It's great to have you with us. I can't recall you being here before, but we're very happy to have you with us today. One of the grandchildren came down from New York for this especially. So if we could please thank the Rubenstein family for the great vision that they've had. Art remains an important part of the Rubenstein family tradition, and we're very grateful for that. Now, here to welcome our keynote speaker is Gia Harewood. Gia Harewood is an educator, curator, and facilitator. Having a master's and PhD in English from the University of Maryland at College Park, she believes in the power of storytelling to connect, heal, and transform. With a master's in applied theater from the City University of New York School of Professional Studies, Gia uses the arts, broadly defined, to amplify and catalyze social justice work. When she's not listening to multiple audiobooks and podcasts at a time, you can find her soaking up memorable performances on stage and screen, riveted by insightful exhibitions and NPR segments, dancing, roller skating, and looking for yet another book. Gia, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I want to echo that thanks to Sidwell, the Rubenstein family, and just this beautiful, magnificent space. I love that's tradition. It's the first time I'm learning of it, so I'm really, really grateful. And so now to the moment that we've all been waiting for. Let me introduce you to Nekisha. From vast freestanding sculptures to intimate gallery installations, Nekisha Durrett's work leverages unexpected materials to make visible the historical connections and connotations that places and materials embody, but are overlooked in our day-to-day lives. Whether reimagining pre-colonial landscapes, bygone Black communities, or family lore, Durrett's research-driven practice strives to carve out contemplative spaces and offer opportunities for viewers to consider what is revealed or concealed when information is filtered across time. Durrett earned her BFA at the Cooper Union in New York City and MFA from the University of Michigan School of Art and Design as a Horace H. Rackham Fellow. She was the 2023 Howard University Social Justice Consortium's Artist in Residence Fellow. Her work is included in numerous private collections and public institutions, including the National Museum of African American History and Culture and the Phillips Collection in Washington, D.C. Durrett's current works investigate individual and collective histories while mining the leavings of our built and natural environments to confront instances of erasure. Genius Loci, a sculptural work in progress, redirects the ancient meaning of the word genius back to landscape and spirit, while celebrating Black contributions to music and architecture in West Palm Beach, Florida. In May 2023, Durrett's proposal, Don't Forget to Remember Me, was selected by Bryn Mawr College's Arch Project in partnership with Monument Lab. As a site-specific public artwork for Bryn Mawr's ongoing legacy as an institution with exclusionary practices, Don't Forget to Remember Me is slated to be unveiled in spring 2025. Durrett lives and works in Washington, D.C. with her wife, Erin, pit bull, Harriet, and 2 cats, Frank and Tube Sock. Welcome, Nekisha.
Thank you, Gia.
Thank you. Okay, so if anybody knows me, they know that I love bringing the audience into what we're about to do. So if you are sitting, please find somebody that you can quickly just chat with, just for a minute. Find a partner in the room. You could just turn to somebody right next to you. Just find somebody, just one person. You're not going to talk to them all night long. All right, everybody's got their person? Okay. Oh, wait. Decide who's going to go first in this sharing. Who's going to go first? All right, decide. I want you to describe a recent laugh that you've had. It could either be a doubled over, eyes-watering bellyache laugh, or just a simple chuckle. Think of a time recently that just made you laugh. It could be anything, personal, professional, anything. Does everybody, just think. Do you have something? Yeah? Have something? Okay. The person who's going to go first in your partnership, could you raise your hand? Person that's going to go first in your partnership. Who's going first? Okay. That first partner, I'm just going to give you a minute. Could you just share with your partner?
You know mine. And then we share it. We know it, but we're going to share it, right? We're going to share it first. I got it.
All right.
Keep it brief. Brief.
All right, wrap. You can wind that down. And the next person. Switch partners. The other person, a recent laugh. Or have you already both shared? Oh, wow, okay, efficient.
Oh,
Because
I want to know what's going on over here.
I know. Thank you for participating in that. It is a little bit non-traditional and unexpected for this kind of event. But given the nature of Nekisha's work, her projects deal with injustice, oppression, violence, and trauma, and the history of space and the place that our socio-political world is in right now. We just sometimes need to remember that there's also joy and that we still can sometimes laugh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What made you laugh recently?
Oh, you're gonna make me tell it? Okay.
Quick, just quick.
Yeah, I'll be really quick. I mean, I do laugh a lot, which surprises a lot of people who don't know me, because just by looking at my work, people tend to think I'm very serious. But the thing that really had me in stitches recently is usually when I do things like this, I can actually be very nervous, and people don't know that I'm nervous, but how that shows up is sometimes having no filter. And so, and just not really being present and paying attention. So last week, a couple weeks ago, I did a talk. I was a visiting artist, and the computer was set up. I brought my own computer, but somehow I was confused about the computer that was out there for me to use in the presentation. And I kept complaining about how dirty my computer was, because my wife always tells me that my computer is so dirty. And so I kept saying, oh my God, this computer is so dirty. Like, what? I need something to wipe it down. I was like wiping it. It wasn't my computer. It was the computer of the woman next to me.
She was listening to you.
At the time, she heard me. And she was just like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And in that moment, I was mortified, but I came home, and as I was telling the story to Aaron, I just burst into laughter and tears at the same time. It was so embarrassing but hilarious.
I love it. I love it. And it's good to know that side of you.
Yes, and what's yours?
Mine, real quickly, I run out to work, running out, you get your keys. Keys are in the same place, bag, lunch, out, elevator, because I live in an apartment building. And I'm like, oh shoot, where's my cell phone? I'm like, I got everything, patting everything down, run back. I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta find my phone. Go back inside, go through all the things, kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, tables, looking. I'm like, okay, well, let me put my stuff down and look for it properly. And as I'm doing that, it is in my hand the entire time, just right here as I'm searching for my phone.
Oh my God.
So thank you for.
And you survived that.
I survived. But thank you for indulging, right? Because
yes.
Those moments, just to remember that there is still laughter.
Yes.
So thinking about you, look at this person here. Could you tell us your name story? How did you get your name? It could be any part of their name story.
So right after I was born, I did not have a name yet. I was not named. And my mom and my dad were in the hospital. Some friends were visiting. One of my mom's friends comes to the hospital. She brings a friend with her that my mom did not know. She's asking these women, like, do you have any name suggestions at all? And they offered suggestions. She didn't like any of the names. And then as the women are leaving the room, the one person that she didn't know kind of whispered, like under her breath, Nekisha. And my mom was like, wait, what did you say?
And she did not know this woman.
She didn't know her. And she said, wait, what did you say? And she said, Nekisha. And my mom was like, oh, I like that. I really like that name. And she had already picked out the name Nicole, So she thought, Nekisha Nicole, it's a nice ring. There were thousands of other Black women in America in 1976 who also named their children Keisha or Nekisha or LaKeisha. And 2 of them were my best friends in middle school.
Okay.
And we were like the Black Heathers. We would go to the mall and like guys would ask us our names and we'd be like Keisha, Keisha, and Keisha. Yeah.
Very cool. So it's almost like it was like a whisper.
Yeah, it was, you know,
She
I love
whispered it
that.
under
Yeah,
her
yeah.
breath.
I love that, you know, like the first utterance of my name was like my mother, like it was a whisper and a shout at the same time. And when I think about it that way, it's interesting because I feel that way about my work, that it can sometimes be subtle, can kind of like blend into the background, and then it just sort of like grabs you.
That's the shout part.
That's the shout, yeah.
Okay, so let's move into your artistic practice.
Yeah.
What is your favorite time to create? Favorite time of day to create? And do you have a favorite medium? A particular medium that you're drawn to?
I don't know if it's my favorite time of day, but my brain is the most active at about 3 a.m.
Girl.
And so I'm not in the studio, but I'm like in bed, kind of, you know, ruminating.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it's like when my body is still like that, it's, you know, kind of the clutter of the day kind of settles to the bottom and these like ideas kind of rise above.
And what's your favorite medium?
Choosing my favorite medium is kind of hard because, as you know, my work is so varied from project to project. It really is sort of the site where the work is going that kind of commands the medium. But I would say that the medium that's been the most impactful of my life and has kind of shaped who I am as an artist, I would say, and many artists would probably say this, has been drawing. I think that, you know, drawing is something that I did for as long as I can remember. And it sort of shaped the way that I look at the world. It helped me to pay attention, to kind of tune into a different frequency. So drawing, and I don't do a lot of drawing now, in the literal sense, but I think of that word drawing and the many meanings that word can have. You know, there's a drawing that means like, you know, an extraction to pull. Like I feel like I'm, you know, kind of like extracting these hidden stories and, you know, drawing connections.
So then with other mediums, since your work is so varied, what are you most drawn to?
I'm most drawn to things that are overlooked. Things that someone could easily walk by and miss. I'm drawn to all of the things that I didn't learn in elementary school, when I felt like parts of my history or the history of my people was erased.
So then, a little bit of feedback.
Coach.
Okay, I think it went away. Oh. Huh. It's like an echo of your past histories.
Yes. We'll call it that.
Right,
Yes.
right. So then, drawing, but this image that you gave us here is not drawing. That right there is.
It's not drawing. No, I'm drawing from the land. That is, I'm standing in front of a mound of soil that was at a church a little small abandoned church on the eastern shore of Maryland.
Okay.
And that was the family church of Harriet Tubman.
Wow.
And so I'm in that photograph kind of collecting this sort of sandy loam soil of the eastern shore. And what you see happening in the next slide is me, I've mixed that soil with resin, and I'm applying the resin to a panel that is made up of tiny little dots, and those tiny little dots make up a portrait of Harriet Tubman, which you can see on the next slide.
No, we took that one out.
So
So
you took that out? Oh.
that's okay.
Oh, it comes later.
Yeah,
We
it's
didn't
gonna
take it
come
out.
later. It's
It's
gonna
later,
come later.
yeah.
It's gonna come later because right now what I'm trying to do, so people
Yeah.
know you in this moment,
Yeah.
right? They know this Nekisha with all of this amazing work. But like, how did you get here? I'm very mindful as an educator that we're in a school and there are lots of students
Yeah.
or emerging artists. Are there any artists in the room? Hey, you see what I'm saying? And so this idea of how did you get from
Yeah,
a high
Yeah.
school, because we're in a high school, yeah,
yeah.
to where you are now?
Yep. So, actually went to high school right down the road from here. I went to Duke Ellington School of the Arts. It was, for the first time in my life, I was around people who were like me. Like I found my people. And this is me at graduation. And on the left, I'm flanked by my two best friends, Hank Willis Thomas and Sean Lucas. And then there's another picture of me probably skipping class down on Wisconsin Avenue. It looks like Wisconsin Avenue for sure. I know I'm supposed to be in class. Look how happy I am.
Wow. I just don't even understand. I was just in school, in the house.
Really?
We were just out on the streets. Okay.
Don't tell my parents.
Nah, well, too late.
Yeah, so, these are people, to this day, Hank is still one of my very close friends. And, not a lot of people can say that about their high school experience. So, yeah, so after high school, I, went to school in New York City and was able to study kind of everything, film, video.
But did you know you wanted to be an artist when you were in high school? I mean, you went to a school for the arts.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So I knew for sure, but I didn't really know, I didn't know what that looked like.
Okay.
I didn't know what life, there aren't many artists in my family, so I didn't know, I didn't know how to make a life as an artist.
Okay.
And there was even a time when I thought that I wasn't going to be an artist. There was a very brief window of time because I told my painting teacher that I wanted to be a veterinarian.
Okay.
And he said, that's ridiculous. You're going to go to Cooper Union and you're going to be a painter.
So what's Cooper Union?
Well, that's what I said to him. I said, what is Cooper Union? I had never heard of it. But Cooper Union is an architecture and engineering school in the West Village of New York. And it's tuition free for all. It was founded by a man named Peter Cooper who believed that education should be free for all. So I went home and told my parents, I guess I'm going to Cooper Union. And my parents were like, what's Cooper Union? I said, well, it's free. They said, that's where you're going.
And when you graduate from Cooper Union, it's like a BFA, or do they have BAs?
It's a BFA,
Do they have graduate programs or no?
No graduate program.
All for free.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And does it still exist?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And there was a short window, I won't get into it, but there was a short window of time for a few years where it was not free. And there was an uprising from the students and alum, and it's now free again. Yeah.
Okay, so you went there.
Yeah.
Walk us through a little bit.
So, let's see. So I went to Cooper Union. I came in thinking I would be an illustrator.
Okay.
but, I was exposed to so many different things that by my junior year, my portfolio was largely made up of photographs.
Oh,
And
okay.
so I actually took that portfolio of photographs and applied to graduate schools.
Okay.
And got accepted to the University of Michigan's program.
All right. So then you're feeling like, boom, I'm going to be a photographer or...
Yeah, it was like, I come from a family of, like by and large, like very, government workers, let's say, like, like you,
A good
good
government.
good government
job.
job, you get benefits, you're set, And so my family was always thinking like, well, you want to make sure you do something that can sustain you, can sustain a life. So, maybe that's photography, or maybe, go to graduate school and you can teach.
I'm echoing a little bit. You're
Oh, yeah.
it's our overall.
Yeah, that's what it is. You're gonna get, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Is it on?
I think so.
Is it on?
Oh.
I'm closer to the... Is it better? Can you hear
I think
now?
that's good. Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm...
Oh, no, it's okay. So,
and I've got this, and I've got this. It's all right.
Oh, my
It's
goodness.
all working out.
so photography. So then I moved back to DC and got myself a good government job working at the Smithsonian.
Nice.
Eventually.
Nice.
And it was at the Smithsonian, there was a period of time where I was not, I wasn't making work
Okay.
for years.
Okay.
And I was working in this graphic shop, and I started to realize that, surrounded by all these creative people who had all of these different skill sets and expertise, I started to think, like, what would it be like to make work like this? What would it be like to use all of these skill sets that I'm gaining to make a body of work?
And what about your classmates? Like, Hank, for example, is a
Yeah.
name that I've heard of a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah,
Right?
yeah, little name. So at some point, because I had this period of time where I would have these fits and starts where I would get a project and then I would be so exhausted from work that I would just sort of like disappear. And then I'd kind of, 5 years later, I'd make something else. And,
Yeah.
but at home, I was always saying that I wanted to have a life as an artist. Like I wanted that to be the thing. And Erin was getting a little tired of hearing me say this. And so she was like, all of these people who who seem to have a map.
Yeah.
Why don't you reach out, like call your buddy Hank and just talk about it. Because usually when we get together, it's like we revert back to our old high school selves. And so I had a serious conversation with him, and he said, look, the next time, I believe in you, I believe in your work. Why don't we collaborate on something?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so?
And so we collaborated, and we created a piece called I See Myself in You. And
Wow.
This piece is in Miami, Florida, in a little place called Liberty City. And this was a pretty ambitious project for me. When I was presented with this wall, I immediately thought, oh, this needs to be a painting. It needs to be, a mural. And then Hank said, Hank was able to look at that budget and say, no, they're looking for something a little more substantial than a mural. And so we started researching various materials and neon lighting, and suddenly we had this massive piece that was bigger than anything that I had done at that point.
Is I mean, is it still there?
It's still there. It's a
Wow.
permanent piece.
That's awesome.
And so that was installed in 2019. And then, you know, because this project like really kind of stretched, you know, what I thought I was capable of. It's because of this that I was able to make Queen City.
Queen City, just this year.
Yeah. So yeah, that last project really taught me to kind of dream bigger. And Queen City is the name of a community that was destroyed in 1941 for the construction of the Pentagon. It's a little known history. And I was able to, you know, build this community of ceramicists to build vessels that would be representative of each one of the former residents of Queen City. So there were 903 residents of Queen City when it was destroyed. When the War Department, so we were on the verge of World War II, and when they looked across the river, they were looking for a place to, they were looking for one site to combine all of the offices for the war effort. And they looked across the river, and they pointed to this plot of land. And they said, there's nothing there.
But there was a whole thriving
black
community there.
Thriving community there.
For how long?
About 45 years.
Yeah.
So so this project is about, you know, it's about a dispossessed people.
With no electricity.
No electricity.
And no running water.
No running water.
But sustained
Yeah.
and maintained for that long.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, there was this beautiful community that thrived despite what they lacked.
So then the vessels represent?
The vessels represent each one of the 903 individuals.
Wow. And why that particular shape of vessel?
That shape is a riff off of a teardrop shape, representing the water that they did not have.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was there at the dedication, and I must admit, it is just astounding. And if you have not gone, please do go. It's just down the road. But from that huge monument, right? And you're talking about drawing and your first project with Hank.
Yeah.
Could you map out then, like how, like from there to here, how did that even happen?
I have to say, I have to like go back a little ways to when I had a conversation with Peggy Cooper Cafritz, and some of you in this room may be aware of Peggy Cooper Cafritz and her legacy, but she was the founder of Duke Ellington School of the Arts, the co-founder of Duke Ellington. And she also, later in life, she became a collector of my work. And she had a devastating fire of her home and lost pretty much all of her art collection. And some of my work was in that collection. And I went over to her house to just like spend some time with Peggy and also to just show her the works that I was working on at the time. And I was showing her my work, and she was like, "No, like, what is this work saying? Like, what is this work about? Like, who are you?"
Wow.
And I was kind of like, like I'd really, like I was at a loss.
Yeah.
And I realized in that moment that I had spent so much time like focusing on like just making work that was beautiful, that was like aesthetically pleasing, that I really didn't have a lot of myself, my own story in the work. And so I was kind of crestfallen. I came home and was really bummed out.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
especially like as a mentor.
Yeah,
To tell you, like,
I mean,
what is
like she
this?
told me, like, she's like, you need to go back to graduate school.
Oh, wow.
I was like, that is not happening.
Ouch.
But I am going to think about what you're telling me.
Yeah.
And so I had an opportunity to write a story for Arlington Art Center. They had a series of talks by women. And so I had to talk about a work of art that I made. And so I was invited by the MLK Library to create an artwork for their Banned Books Week.
Okay.
And I remembered, I kind of, at that moment, thinking about what Peggy said, I went inward and thought about the time that I found myself in my sister's closet. I literally found myself in her closet, literally and figuratively. And I always go to her closet because she had cool clothes. And, but I also found The Color Purple. And so I would sneak into her closet and I would read The Color Purple. And I was, I think this book came out in, 1982, or I think the film came out in 1985. So there was some buzz about the film. Mm-hmm. I knew that there was some like naughty bits about the book. And so I start reading the book and I read this line of text. Just these 5 simple words. I love you, Miss Seeley.
Love you, Miss Seeley.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what followed this was a kiss between Seeley and Shug. And it was like the first time that I really felt like I saw myself. Like, like it was like something was being named, like something that I did not have language for.
Yes.
Something that I knew about myself. I felt it, but I didn't know like what it was.
Yeah.
And so then we all, as a family, we went to go see The Color Purple in the theater. And actually had a family member, I meant to tell you that, a family member who was in The Color Purple.
Wait. This first, the movie?
This one, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we all, was like a big deal. So we all went to the movie to see this cousin. I was excited not to see my cousin, but to see this kiss on the big screen.
Yes.
And so,
In 1985.
Yeah, but I was so, how disappointed was I that shortly after this little scene right here, it faded to black. And so I felt like that was a huge, that was a moment of erasure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I then created this artwork called I Love You, Miss Seeley. And that's Shug Avery's hand down there holding a balloon up, announcing her love to Miss Seeley. And there it is, writ large.
You can't miss that one, right?
Yeah, can't
That's
miss
the
it.
shout, the erasure, or the whisper and the shout from your name story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's wonderful. I remember seeing this. I didn't know you then, but I remember, just walking down on 9th and G or past MLK or whatever, and it was so striking. So then that awakening and that knowing now of yourself, could you map out some of because you've done a lot of different types of things, could you map out the projects that have made you feel the most proud or that have just been the most resonant for you? Just a few of those for us. Okay.
One of the things that I think my work gives me is an opportunity to kind of delve into my own familial history. And, there are some bits of my family's history that present a different kind of erasure. There are things that, that my family thought were too heavy for me to understand. So, for example, I did not know the migration story of my grandmother and how she came from Orange County, Virginia, as a young girl, to how her family came from Orange County to upstate New York.
Okay.
And so until I found a suitcase containing belongings from my grandmother, and I asked my mother, like, how, it was all this stuff from Poughkeepsie, New York, and I was like, how did they
Your grandmother's suitcase from when she was in Virginia. So basically that
I'm thinking this is something that I'm not sure when I couldn't ask her.
Okay.
I'm not sure when she acquired the suitcase, but there were things in the suitcase that were from when she was a very little girl, probably when she was in Orange, Virginia, to when she met and fell in love with my grandfather. There are love letters between the two of them when my grandfather was a Pullman porter. And they write to each other about how, in love they are and how much they miss each other. And
that is, and it's in cursive. You've heard about people,
right? Yeah.
the push to teach children cursive again.
Yeah, so one of the other things that I found in the suitcase that was remarkable to me was a little four-leaf clover that was pressed in a Bible. And just a little tidbit of the story, of their migration story, they found a realtor in upstate New York who told them that they needed to move into this house in New York in the middle of the night because it was a white community, and
in the night.
They had to move, like unpack their car and everything, and like move into this house at night. But at some point, you got to come outside.
You got to come out.
Right?
Right.
Yeah, at some point, you got to come out. So no one from this side of the family, they're not around. Like all of my grandmother had 13 siblings. They had all passed on. She had passed on. There was no one that I could ask. My mom didn't know. So I had to imagine, what was that moment like when they emerged? And so, but all I had was that little four-leaf clover. And so I started to make these four-leaf clovers out of polymer clay. Just one after another, after another, after another, sort of meditating on this reimagining of this story, and wasn't quite sure how I was going to present these four-leaf clovers, what I was going to do with them, but over time, over a period of months, I was just making them and taking over the kitchen and baking them in the oven, and I just started making more and more and more.
Were you doing anything else? I mean...
Actually, you know what I was, because I went back in I was working on 3 other projects at the same time. But anyhow, so I had so many, so I had to bring in friends, and there we are in the gallery on the floor, and we're just sticking them to the floor. And there were, all in all, there were about 20.
Oh, wait, did you know that you wanted to have them installed in a gallery? It sounded as though you just
So I had written a proposal for an exhibition, and it wasn't fleshed out.
Okay.
The clovers weren't fleshed out, nothing was fleshed out. This kind of emerged, the suitcase kind of emerged while I was planning for the show.
And you had this other idea.
And I had this idea,
and then suitcase and basically all of history just drops out. And
Yeah. And so I had about 24,000 of these clovers.
Wow.
That just sort of formed this 14-foot in diameter. It's like a mandala.
Yeah.
The way you enter the space was very dark, contemplative, and
clearly installed from the inside out.
Clearly, right. If I had started the other way around, that might have been, yeah.
Wow. Okay. So then that erasure into another shout, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Comes to this. What's the next project?
Yeah. So this is actually one of the photographs that I took while at Cooper Union, and when I started focusing on photography. And I would come home and I would take these photographs of my family members, and this is my great-grandmother.
And she's in Virginia when you took this?
Oh, no, this is in D.C., in Northeast D.C.,
Got it.
in D.C. And recently I had the opportunity to, recently I interviewed my dad about his growing up in this house that my grandmother purchased, my great-grandmother purchased in the 1950s.
Wow.
And he just sort of flippantly said this thing about her laundering altar cloths for the Catholic Church. They were Catholic.
Altar cloth.
Altar cloths.
So if somebody does not know what an altar cloth is, what exactly, just a little short, what's an altar cloth?
It's like, it's the cloths that are used in all the like communion ceremonies.
Okay.
It's like used to like wipe the chalice and like,
Okay.
you know,
Basically
present the-
holy.
yeah, very, yes.
Garments.
Yeah, so if wine spills on it, that's considered blood. If, you know, there are crumbs from the bread, that's like the body, you know, that sort of Catholic symbolism.
Okay. So
And
why
so
did that-
she was,
yeah.
so it was a devotional practice for her to launder these cloths. And my dad said it kind of flippantly, like that wasn't really the story. It was just like, you know, an aside. And I said, wait, what? And I got really curious about this practice of laundering the cloths and found out that it is this very sacred and devotional practice where the cloths are not laundered in a machine.
They cannot be.
They cannot be.
They
They
must
have
be
to be
laundered
soaked. Yeah, they have
by
to be
hand.
soaked. And women of the church volunteer to do this.
Wow.
And so the cloths are soaked in a bucket, and then the water becomes now sacred. And the water then has to be taken outside and poured into the earth.
Wow. Like you just couldn't pour it in your drain?
No.
Would anybody know? I'm just kidding. But basically, no, this idea that there is a ceremonial, like this ritual.
Yeah.
And she was doing this for how long?
Oh, for years. Yeah, she was doing it for years.
And you're just finding out
So
from
much
your dad.
so that my dad said that she bought a machine, like an ironing machine, so that she could like crank the cloths through to iron them or something. But anyhow, so again, that's like one of those like, it's like this little gesture that can easily get overlooked. But the power of that, like the intention of that, like pouring this sacred water into the soil and kind of, you know, protecting the house. So there's, you know, for me, like this work is about like, you know, invisible labor.
So this inspired your before and still kettle. And so what are these impressions that are underneath these? And
So
what
these
is the
are-
material that we're looking
So there's a text which I encourage all of you to collect. It's out in the gallery next to these porcelain pieces. But there is a text that is a narrative that I wrote that is inspired by the conversation I had with my dad about this house. And so there are, you know, objects that are mentioned in the text that I made porcelain sheets and draped them over the objects and then fired the porcelain.
These are like just ordinary everyday objects.
Ordinary, everyday objects.
So your dad was telling this story, and he's going on to try to tell you this important thing.
Oh yeah, and I'm hung
Like,
up
hold
on the.
on, wait.
I'm hung up on the iron.
You're
and
on the eye, right?
Yeah.
Right. This idea of the ordinary, the
Yeah.
overlooked,
Yeah. Yeah.
like this idea that it is almost seen as the wallpaper in the room of important things, and you're
Yeah.
like, hold on, let's look at this
Yeah,
wallpaper.
it's I want to try to like give authority to overlooked things. I mean, to think like my great grandmother is not here anymore, but like she touched an iron over and over and over and again. And that iron is somewhere like bearing a part of her, you know.
So then tell us about this project that we started to hear a little bit about in the beginning.
So this is the portrait of Harriet Tubman, which was a commission for the Freeman Foundation. I actually did not, they wanted me to make a portrait of Harriet Tubman in the style of a portrait that I made of James Baldwin. And I didn't want to do that because, every project I do is very different. And I wanted to make something that was specific to Harriet Tubman.
Yeah.
I actually didn't want it to look like her because I feel like there are a few images of Harriet Tubman. We've kind of seen them all. This is a very famous image of Harriet Tubman that's actually in the collection of the National Portrait Gallery.
But they wanted their specific, like, please do it this way. And so you complied.
Yeah, they didn't want that image, but they wanted it to look like her.
Exactly, okay.
So you know, you saw the image earlier where I'm laying on the panel and I'm stippling all these little dots by hand.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, I'm listening to a biography that was written by a white woman about Harriet Tubman. And it's clear that there is a filter. This woman, she was a white woman of her time. She was an abolitionist, but she was a white woman of her time. And she would use language like, you know, she would describe Harriet's mind as being ignorant and dark. But then on the other hand, like, you know, praising her as a hero and all this, so.
And you were listening to the biography while doing this portrait? On purpose?
Yes, on
Okay.
purpose, on
Okay.
purpose. And then I started to think, well, how would I portray Harriet Tubman without presenting her likeness?
Okay.
And so, luckily, I said yes to this project because one day I was working on it in my studio. We had open studios, and an artist came in who happened to be working with another artist on a documentary film on these two women who own a farm in Preston, Maryland.
Let's say their names out. Donna Deere.
Donna
and
Deere and Paulette Green.
Paulette Green.
And so this farm that they owned was a plantation, and it was a plantation where Harriet's father, who's actually a free man, worked, but her brothers were enslaved on this property. And Harriet would return time and time again to free members of her family from this property, from this community. This is the witness tree that's on the property where Harriet would hold hands with her family members around the tree before they would travel north.
So you literally were working
I was working on the
on a
Harriet,
Harriet Tubman portrait.
and someone came in who had a connection to these women.
Where Harriet Tubman would actually free people.
Yeah, and so
Wow.
she connected me with these women. I went to visit them, and I collected soil from around this tree, and here's that soil here. I'm gathering it up.
Because you wanted to
Applying.
create a portrait of Harriet,
wanted to
but
create
not in
Yeah.
the traditional way.
Yes, yeah. So what I wanted was to, in a sense, create a portrait of her mind, which
her.
was described as ignorant and dark. But I'm thinking of darkness as like just vastness, the universe, expansive, limitless,
And beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is Frontier. This is the work that I created using the soil from that farm.
Very different from your other portrait of Harriet Tubman,
Yeah.
right? So if someone is saying, "Oh, did you see, her new portrait at the Baltimore Museum of Art?" And they go in and they see this ring and light.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait, I thought this was a portrait of Harriet Tubman.
Yeah. I mean, some people really want to. Even the people that commissioned that portrait of Harriet Tubman, bless their hearts, like they really wanted. They thought in order for it to be related to Harriet Tubman, it needed to look like her.
Okay.
And people get upset when their sculptures, like when memorials and monuments don't look like who they're supposed to look like.
Okay.
So I wanted to push back against that
Yeah.
and think about think about representation and what that can look like, and also like push against like what can be monumental.
Right.
Yeah.
And this idea of the ignorant and dark, right? You're pushing back against that false narrative and amplifying the ordinary, the everyday. I love that. So then how did you get, thinking about that idea of false narratives, how do we get to this work of Magnolia?
Yeah. So I know we're getting close to Q&A, so.
Yeah.
But I'll just say that, behind each one of these names that are punched into these leaves, there is a police report that is a false narrative justifying why these women deserve to die.
Powerful. I have so many questions about that, but I'm going to leave it there because what I appreciate is that you took, this is, again, if you juxtapose it to, your portrait of Harriet Tubman wanting to capture the mind, and now a piece about, or an installation around police violence, or honoring these women. I've seen lots of pictures with the women's or, people's names underneath, but these are just leaves with their names in it, right?
Yeah.
Pushing that boundary again.
Yeah, I'll say, I think that I'm sure that there was a seed planted back when I was in college.
Yeah.
And I was studying under this color theorist who studied with Joseph Albers. And he would have us go out in the fall, we would collect leaves. And leaves of all, color ranges, and we would make these color projects and, like Joseph Albers' leaf studies. And since I did that, I've never looked at leaves the same.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do something like that with this project. So that leaf project that I did with my students with the with the fall leaves, I had a student say, this always makes me think of your class, and I never look at leaves the same. And so that's what I wanted to do with this, but I wanted to, whenever someone saw a magnolia leaf, someone who had seen this project, that they would think of these women.
Yeah.
That it would be it would now be etched.
Yeah. So then in this big journey, right, from then until now, what kind of healing have you experienced along the way? Because these are really heavy topics, but there's a beauty that you're bringing to the subjects in very different representations. And there's a lot of different kinds of work. What kind of healing have you experienced?
Just finding value in my own story,
Yeah.
seeing myself in the stories that other people have.
Yeah.
That was a big one.
That's the biggest. I mean, if we
Yeah.
can value just our ordinary story, right? That is just feels very monumental. So we need to open up for quick Q&A, but as we conclude, just here with you and I, what if people have not gotten anything else? What's the one thing that you want to make sure that we get this evening, or that we take away with us?
Yeah. Goodness, I think that, I learned so much working on the Queen City project.
Yeah.
And just thinking about community, thinking about dispossessed people, and thinking about how when you remove someone from their land, you are removing infinite possibilities. And one of the things that I valued so much about Queen City is that I was able to kind of, honor those people by building another community to make this work. And I guess the takeaway there is just, how, it sounds totally hokey, but, just how together we are capable of so much. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. I could keep going, but I'm going to pause there and thank you.
Yeah. We're going to do the questions.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gia. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's open it up for Q&A. I have lots of questions of my own, but we would love to hear from the audience There's going to be a microphone passed around. If you could just raise your hand, Rachel will bring that to you. Questions or comments? There's one way up here. And while you're bringing that microphone, I love how your hands as a child mimic your hands as an adult.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's a great image. Hello, hello? Okay. Hi, thank you so much for this. And Gina, you and I talked about this a bit the other day, but for the rest of us here, Nekisha, can you talk about why the magnolia leaf? And I'm really curious about how you worked with that, how that you could use that as a substrate, how you could etch into it the way that you did. If you can talk about that process a little bit.
Yeah. So it kind of was a journey getting to that. I had a conversation with a friend years ago about a magnolia tree that was in her yard. And she hated this tree. And I couldn't understand why. Like, I'm like, it's beautiful. Like, magnolia tree is like one of the most beautiful trees in the world. Like, it's the smell, everything, the majesty, all of it. But she's like, the leaves. I can't get rid of the leaves. There's nothing, like, they don't go anywhere. I can't rake them. It's hard to mow over them.
Yeah.
Like,
They're hard to destroy.
They're hard to destroy.
My mother always said, don't plant a magnolia tree too close to the house because the roots spread, they get big.
Yeah.
And can break the foundation.
Yeah. So I kept a magnolia leaf on my desk for a long time because I was kind of thinking, well, if it sticks around like that, maybe this is a natural material that would be good to work with for a project. And so I just kept it on my desk and like watched it, just to see how it would deteriorate over time. And it never did. It never
deteriorated.
It just looked exactly the same. I mean, it changed color a little bit. It curled. It wasn't quite as rich brown as it was, but it stayed basically the same. And then in 2020, I live about a block and a half away from Rock Creek Church Cemetery, and we would take walks there. It was like one of the few places where we felt safe outside. Lots of air to breathe. And so I found myself under a magnolia tree and looked down at the leaves and I was like, wow, it's like the same color as my skin. They're just this beautiful, like rich brown when they die and fall. And I had another show lined up and I could no longer make that work because I was going to be collaborating with someone. I needed something small that I can work on at home. And so I started taking these leaves home and like experimenting with them. And at the same time, we were having these uprisings and George Floyd was murdered and Breonna Taylor was murdered, Ahmaud Arbery. And so, I'm meditating on this loss and beginning to see these leaves as me. And as these fallen individuals. So that was sort of where that came from. And then I had this tool. It was like the only tool that I grabbed from my studio because I was like grabbing stuff from my studio so I can work at home. So I grabbed this little Japanese hole punch that has these different size nibs. And I kind of designed the text for these women's names and made stencils, taped the stencil to the leaf, and then punched the names into the leaf, and then...
And why just women?
Why just women? Because, I'm thinking about erasure. Usually, it's typically, more often than not, it's the names of Black men who their names get lifted up in conversations around state violence, but women are brutalized as well. So I wanted to insert these names into that conversation.
And and when I think of magnolia trees, I think of Billie Holiday's song. The scent of magnolias is in there.
And then another thing to note is that the light boxes that you see outside there, that wood is actually poplar, which is another
poplar trees. Yeah. Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you. Question again over here. I love that juxtaposition, yeah?
Good evening, Brian Bailey, emerging artist from DC. As an artist, as a newer artist, I've been able to find my freedom, and I realize that that's one of the most important things as being an artist is to be free and create what you want to create.
Yeah.
And you spoke on just now saying that they wanted you to do the generic version of a Harriet Tubman portrait, and you decided to do exactly what you wanted to do and portray it how you wanted to portray it. How important is that as an artist to realize that it's, I would say, better for you to be free and love the people that accept it and just move forward like that? And when did you feel like you found that freedom?
Thanks for that.
good.
That's
No,
a
that's
really
good.
great question. We kind of touched on that.
Because
Yeah,
You go ahead.
because I was thinking about how, like, my friends used to always tell me to quit my job. Like, when I was working at the Smithsonian, I worked at Smithsonian for like 10 years. And I loved the work that I did there. And I think that I wouldn't be the artist I am today had I not done that work. But my friends would always tell me, my friends who were like full-time artists, like, quit your job. But in hindsight, I think that actually having that job actually, in a way, gave me freedom. Because I never took a job, I never took on a project because I needed the money. Because I had a salary, I had income, like, you know, so I was kind of able to sort of choose what I wanted. Like, I didn't need to compromise, and I was able to, I didn't feel like so much was on the line, so I could experiment and try new things. And I think in a lot of ways that has shaped, that freedom has shaped me to make this body of work that is so varied and so particular to what I want to say.
But when you were forced to make something that you didn't want to make, right? Where was the freedom? What came from that? Being forced to make Harriet look exactly like Harriet.
Yeah, someone came into my studio and saw Harriet and was like, oh my God, I'm working on this, I'm seeing Harriet everywhere. I'm working on this documentary. You got to meet these ladies. Like, had I not, had I said no,
Right.
that would not have happened. But it opened up a whole universe there.
It feels like sometimes those no's or something like, I really don't want to do this. I really don't want to be in this place. And you cannot see what that end of the rainbow is, you know? You just have to move through, and then hindsight will show you that freedom.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Any other questions? A mic over here, please. I love that. And you didn't know that person was coming.
No, I didn't.
Literally just walked in and said, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And they were working on the very same
Yeah.
plantation that, my gosh.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Emily Smith. I am a longtime fan of Ms. Durrett, and I've had conversations with you about art before, but I didn't realize that your work was grounded in research and history.
Yeah.
So can you talk about how you came to that way of looking at your art? And then, total side note, what happened to the four-leaf clovers?
What was the last part
what
of the
happened
question?
to the four-leaf clovers? Okay, I'll say that for last. Yeah,
right? I mean,
Yeah, I'll explain. Yeah. So the interest in history and delving and all that, it actually, like, I think, to use that example of the Harriet Tubman portrait. I grew up in Maryland, maybe, an hour away from where Harriet Tubman grew up. And no one, when I went to elementary school in Maryland, I didn't know that Harriet Tubman had anything to do with Maryland until I was much, much older. And having spent some time as an educator, I'm always looking for like little stories to like connect students to history.
Where were you
an
educator?
Oh, at Duke Ellington. Yeah, I went back to teach at Duke Ellington, yes. And in the Museum Studies department.
Nice.
And so I just think that that was like a missed opportunity. The teacher, like, how cool would it have been for me to know that the very same soil that I was playing on was very similar to the soil that Harriet, brought, 70 some odd people across and led through the dark and, the muck and all that to freedom. So
The clovers.
it makes me, so it makes me dig and like figure out like, what else don't I know? And what's a way that I can bring this information forward to make people, not to make people glaze over, because that's always the challenge with teaching, right? Teenagers. How do I deliver this information without them like falling asleep? And so I, try to find ways to take all that information in and distill it, reduce it down to its, most necessary parts. And
So what happened to the clovers?
okay, good question. So the clovers are in storage. They are in my storage unit on Blair Road, along with everything else. I often have these big ideas and make these big things, but then when the show is over, I'm like, oh, gotta put this somewhere. So yes, they're in a storage unit, but I would love to show them again. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Way back.
Yes, in the way back. I love how you find little
Hello.
unknown histories.
I'm Reggie Pointer. First off, want to thank you, Nekisha, for just allowing me to be part of this. I'm one of the Queen City Potters. My question is this. I recently, and I'm a potter, obviously. I recently came back from a show in Boston, Hear Me Now. It was a work of slave potter Dave, the potter, Drake. And it just showed me a whole bunch of stuff. But when I went to that show, it was something I wanted to really take a minute and digest, but there was nowhere in that space to sit down for a moment and to just take it in. But then when I look at your piece, the Cody Gallery show, I noticed there's a bench right there. So I guess I'm curious in a sense of, hey, that's me pointing. In a sense, it's got me wondering, do you have any control over the space itself, or was it just a serendipity moment where the bench just happened to be there, or that's the normal thing? I'm just, because it's sometimes good to just take it in, even if it's just for a moment, and sometimes we just move through and gone, and so.
Yeah, the bench was a question. It was like, do you want the bench?
So wait, where was this bench? What's the work?
At Cody Gallery, where I first exhibited Magnolia. There's a bench in the middle of the gallery, and on that bench there was the catalog with all of the leaves and the narratives for each woman.
And that narrative is here.
And it's here. It's here. Yes. And so we decided to keep the bench because it'd be a place to put the catalog, and also for people to really sit with the work. And people really did. Like, I know from my years of working in a museum how little time people spend in front of a work of art. I think that there was a study done, and it's like 4 seconds or something like that.
Yeah.
But I would get phone calls from Caitlin, who was then the director, Caitlin Barry, and she would say, there are people that they're not leaving. They would just stay and stay. Someone stayed for an hour.
Wow.
Yeah.
Taking in the wallpaper.
Yeah.
There was a question way in the back. And what are we looking at in this Queen City picture on the inside of this sculpture?
Yeah. We're inside of Queen City. That's actually Martha Jackson Jarvis in the photo on the left.
Yes.
Who's one of the artists, and that's Sylvia Snowden
Nice.
next to her. And there's Reggie. Reggie's on the far right, and Whitney another. Yeah, sorry.
Hello, good evening. Kiera Walker, photographer and DC native. First, I want to say that I was invited out tonight, or a friend told me about this artist talk. I had no clue who the speaker would be, so I'm pleasantly surprised that it's you. I've been a fan for quite some time now, so this is very exciting. But you mentioned, finding beauty in the mundane or in inanimate objects. When did that start? Do you feel like that started as a child, or was it once you really dived into the arts that you started looking towards these objects and finding the beauty in them?
This could be a really wonderful way to wrap up. So thank you for
Yeah,
that
that's a
beautiful
great-
conclusion.
Thank you. That's a great question. And thanks for coming out tonight. I think I've always had that. Like, I've had a nostalgia for things. Like, this is gonna sound silly, but I remember like being in preschool and having a Princess Leia action figure. And like, I wasn't supposed to take it to school. My mom's, do not take this to school.
Out in the street,
Out in
taking
the
stuff
street,
that
I know, like, what, yeah. So, and I had this little dress on, it had a little pocket, and I stuck it down in the pocket, keeping it safe, and it disappeared. Like, I had no idea where it went. I spent weeks looking for that and like hiding it from my mother to this day, if I see like a Princess Leia action figure, like it'll take me right back to that time period. So for me, like, I think that's a kind of a silly example, but I think that, objects have the potential to be so much more than what they are. It's almost like, like a smell, like how a smell, can trigger memory. Like, objects do the same.
Sound.
And it's the absence of the object that I think is more powerful than the thing itself. So the fact that I don't have that Princess Leia doll anymore, it has even more power over me.
The absence is clear in your altar cloth exhibition.
Yeah.
Where you're giving reverence to the ordinary, your family, but also to, I think it's in the other way. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gia.
This was really wonderful.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you all. Yeah. This is, thank you. I think you can do it. I think you can do it. I was just going to get back to the absence and present slide while you close.
Oh, please. Thank you for that. That was beautiful. And Gia, thank you for starting us with laughter. We were talking that we had a hard time remembering when we had last laughed. And thank you for bringing us in that way. It was really, really very, very beautiful. And Nekisha, I was very struck from what you said early on, that you were drawn to what is overlooked, right? And I think that's what the question was speaking about as well. And I just want to thank you for drawing our attention to what's overlooked, and for
Thank you.
for giving the items the histories that you resurrect the authority that they deserve. And thank you for letting us reimagine along with you what can and should be monumental. It was really a beautiful presentation, and there's tremendous energy in your work, and we're very, very grateful that you were with us this evening.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me, really.
Thank you. And thank you to the Rubenstein family, as always, for making this possible. It's an amazing legacy. Thank you, friends. Thank you for being here. Have a great and safe ride home. Bye-bye.